7:06, I call the Francis Howell School District Board of Education meeting to order. I apologize that we're running just a few minutes late this evening. We are going to begin with Pledge of Allegiance. This evening, it will be led by our Cosley student, Henry Lilienthal, and his kindergarten teacher, Caitlin Howard.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Henry. Great job.
I'm sitting in the spot. Hey, you keep saying nice. You keep saying.
Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted. Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. By roll call. Ms. Walker?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Next on our agenda is recognitions. Mr. Dyckman.
Thank you, Mrs. Coe. We have established a tradition of recognizing our individual and team state champions as part of our board meetings, but today is a first. Last month, Francis Howell High School sophomore Brooke Clemens became the first Francis Howell para-athlete to win a state championship. Brooke won the Misha State Championship in the shot put with a throw of 9 feet 2 inches, and that's no small feat. And for show and tell, Brooke brought us a little something. So if anyone wants to see how hard it really is to put a shot 9 feet 2 inches, we'll meet you out in the parking lot afterwards. Brooke also followed up her state championship performance with a second place finish in the 100. She's now been a state medalist for 2 years in a row and will be a junior this year. So, not to build up expectations much, but that would seem to indicate that Brooke has 2 more years of competition ahead of her. Way to go, Brooke. Brooke's coaches and parents, you guys want to come up for this picture too? Congratulations, Brooke. We're proud to announce that this year, 3 Francis Howell students scored a perfect 36 on the ACT test. Laurel Ammon from Francis Howell Central, Ariana Chavez from Francis Howell North, and Sarah Steins from Francis Howell High School join a very select group. Only 1/10 of 1% of the almost 2 million students who take the ACT every year are able to achieve that perfect score. Laurel Ammon, Laurel, would you please come up? Laurel graduated from Francis Howell Central with a 4.73 GPA. She's taken a full course load of AP classes, is on the National Honor Society Executive Board, and also earned an NHS scholarship. She's a nationally recognized musician who has been active in marching band, basketball pep band, and the St. Charles County Youth Orchestra. Laurel has received a scholarship from the University of Notre Dame and will major in biochemistry. Laurel Ann. Ariana Chavez graduated from Francis Howell North with a 4.83 GPA and was ranked first in her class. She's been named an AP Scholar with Distinction, a Presidential Scholar semifinalist, and a recipient of the John Philip Sousa Award. During her high school career, she's been active in marching band, wind ensemble, woodwind choir, science club, the Technology Students Association, and Mu Alpha Theta. Ariana plans on studying computer engineering at Missouri University of Science and Technology next year. Congratulations.
Families can come out. I can take a picture if you'd like. Have the front row slide.
Congratulations, ladies. Our teachers impact the student's life in countless ways, and in some cases, like Causley teacher Caitlin Howard, they might actually save a student's life one day. Caitlin had just brought her kindergarten class in from recess for snack time on Monday, April 15th. She was at her desk when Henry Lilienthal walked up and pointed to his throat to indicate he was choking. Caitlin jumped into action and performed the Heimlich maneuver and was able to dislodge a piece of watermelon that had become stuck in Henry's throat. Could we have you guys all come up, please? Henry says, and I quote, "I felt kind of bad and sad, and I walked up to Miss Howard. She pushed on my tummy, and then it was all right." Henry and his family, and Henry's family should come on up too, were so appreciative that later that week, they surprised Caitlin with flowers and a note. Henry even drew her a picture of him and his watermelon. And at the top, the note said, "Thank you, Miss Howard, for saving my life." Caitlin and Henry. Says he hasn't had much watermelon this summer. Thank you, Mrs. Coe.
All right, next on our agenda is patron comments. The Board of Education welcomes comments from its community. A period of public comment is set aside at the beginning of our meeting to hear from our community. So during patron comments, patrons are invited to address the Board of Education. Please come to the podium and so everyone can hear. Please adhere to the 3-minute time limit. The board is interested in hearing the public's concerns and opinions, but we do not answer patrons' questions during our meeting. Questions and concerns will be addressed by Dr. Mary Hendricks Harris and other appropriate staff members. Please remember that all comments about individual students and staff are not allowed due to confidentiality. These concerns need to be brought to the administration's attention and may be brought to the board in closed session. With that, this evening, we will have our first patron comment from Tracy Bono.
Hello, thanks for having me. The United States Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights requires that school districts report every time a student is restrained or secluded. And I, as well as many other families, know that the reporting done is not always accurate. My son was restrained and put in isolation rooms repeatedly at Warren Elementary School, and this was not documented properly. This is a problem all through the United States. There's currently a federal investigation underway regarding this reporting problem. Actually, some preliminary reports have already come out. The Washington Post just had a story on it yesterday. NPR had a story on it, I think, 2 days ago. There's more to come in regard to that federal investigation, and it is not good. There's also pending Missouri House legislation regarding more oversight on reporting. And there's a federal bill regarding banning these isolation rooms in all public schools in the United States. There's a national movement to not just have oversight or better documentation on these rooms. There's a national movement that's getting very loud in regard to banning these rooms altogether. Experts agree that using isolation rooms ignores neuroscience, which shows that when you put children in these rooms, it makes their brains go into a fight or flight state. This serves to increase the stress on a child's nervous system. It primes their brain to amplify threat detection, and this causes children to lose faith in the safety of human relationships. Science has proven this to be the effect. My son's still suffering. My son goes to therapy. He's on medication. He is still suffering from the post-traumatic stress disorder. We are not alone. I've spoken with so many families and so many children and so many teachers in the Francis Howell School District who agree with me. There are many proven viable alternatives to using this abusive method. There are better methods. I can provide a full, not in this time frame, I can even email some resources to anyone who's interested. I'm assuming you all did not get on the school board to maintain the status quo. I'm hoping that you didn't get on the school board to help cover up pervasive abuse. I'm assuming you got on this school board to serve, to make this district better, to be the best it can be, to make this district accountable. The local NBC affiliate actually did a story a couple months ago exposing this abuse. They used my son as an example to illustrate this horrific practice and what can happen to a child and their families.
Thank you, your time is up.
Be on the right side of history.
Thank you. Additional comments? FHEA? FISPA? Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented for the June 20th, 2019 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lane, seconded by Mrs. Walker. By roll call.
Mrs. Lane?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Board, next on our agenda is a motion to approve the federal program annual review as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. Dr. Hoban, thank you.
So this would typically be in consent, but what happened this year is some late information came to us. We pulled it off consent just so you'd have a chance to hear what the changes have been. And ultimately, two things happened. One was that we found out we were going to be fully funded for next year, which is a significant bump in the funds. And two was that the latest figures showed us that Fairmount has risen slightly above Harvest Ridge in the free and reduced lunch percentage numbers, meaning we could not continue to serve Harvest Ridge through title money unless we also picked up Fairmount through that. So this updated memo shows that Fairmount will now be picked up as a targeted school in addition to the other three that are school-wide. And the good news is with that full funding, that means we won't have to change any of the funding for the other schools to pick up this additional support for Fairmount. So the only change here is very positive, but we want to pull off consent just so you have a chance to hear what the changes were.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Board, any questions? Thank you, Dr. Hoban. By roll call?
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Next on our agenda is curriculum review first reading. So board, there's a lot of, a variety of curriculums involved. Please make sure you take a look at those. Under fiscal responsibility, we have our purchases over $7,500. I'll entertain a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. Board, any questions? By roll call.
Mr. Lang?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Board, I entertain a motion to approve the May 2019 financial report as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mr. Lane. Mr. Supple, anything to add?
No, Mrs. Crowe, thank you.
Thank you. Board, any questions? By roll call?
Ms. Stiglich?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the additional certified and non-certified Title I funded positions as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. Board, any questions? Mrs. Simpkins, anything to add? No. By roll call?
Mr. Haynes?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the insurance plan changes and premium contribution rates for the 2019-2020 plan year as presented.
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. We did have a work session on this last meeting. Mr. Supple?
Thank you, Mrs. Crowe. One bit of information that I did want to share is that I told the board at our work session that the bids for life and disability insurance coverages were going to be reviewed the following week by the insurance committee. We have done that, and our recommendation is to change to MetLife for all of those coverages, so our basic life, our voluntary life, or short and long-term disability insurance would be with MetLife. They are matching the coverage levels and the pricing that we have with our current provider, but they are offering some incentives. We will get an annual credit of approximately $30,000 that we will use to offset the cost of our online enrollment tool. They're going to give us a one-time credit of $18,500 to cover any programming changes that might be necessary in that enrollment tool as a result of the shift to MetLife. So the insurance committee did have a chance to review these proposals with our insurance consultant, and their recommendation was to recommend MetLife. So that is a set of new information from the work session.
Thank you, Mr. Supple. Board, any questions? By roll call.
Ms. Walker?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. next on our agenda is our 2019-2020 budget adoption. We've already approved our staffing plan. We have focused in being able to approve salaries, and now with that being 85% of our budget, here we come with the budget adoption. So I would entertain a motion to approve the adoption of the 2019-2020 budget as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. Mr. Supple, anything to add?
No, thank you.
Board, any questions? Mr. Hain?
Yeah, I am looking at the budget. I know we have a preliminary budget, and 2 weeks ago at our other meeting when we had our first reading of the budget, you provided us with a preliminary budget and a projected budget. And the projected budget was based on historical variances that we typically have had in past years. And I noticed that the difference between those two is approximately $5 million. It's the difference between us approving a balanced budget and a $5 million deficit budget. I noticed that the projected portion, which was in green at the last meeting, isn't part of the document, but there's a paragraph that's been added to basically say that the budget shows that we have a $5.2 million deficit, but in a typical year, the district will collect more revenue than budgeted and spend less than budgeted. Applying the historical variance in revenue and expense to the FY20 preliminary budget, the district would end the FY20 fiscal year with a balanced budget. And that's what I believe. I think that's what the rest of the board believes, and I would assume that that's what the executive cabinet believes. Is that factual to an extent?
I have no reason to assume that we not see the same type of variances as we've done previously.
So following that up, I guess the question that I have is, while I'm approving this and I have a lot more knowledge of the budget than a lot of other people in the district that are just looking at one sheet of paper and may not read the bottom of this, I truly believe that we will have a balanced budget next year. But can you help me to understand or explain to me why our budget isn't based on the projected numbers, the green sheet from 2 weeks ago, as opposed to a black and white sheet that has given us a $5 million deficit, and then with a disclaimer saying, don't look at the numbers we have above because they're not going to be correct. You help me to understand why that makes sense and why I should vote for something like those lines.
Sure. I think there's a distinction between a budget, which is a planning document, and actual financial results. And so what you're approving tonight is a budget, which is a planning document. It's a fluid document. The board at every meeting approves adjustments to the budget when there are transfers between funds. In addition to the transfers between funds, there are other transfers that take place during the year. The budget is not static from July 1 until June 30th. And so the budget outlines the plan, and if we do everything that's planned, those are the actual results that would occur. We know that everything doesn't happen exactly as planned. And so this is a plan. This is the guideline. And so if you think about the typical 2% swing that might occur in our expenditures, I think it's important that we have the spending authority to do what's been requested. So the compilation, in addition to the salaries that are calculated based on previously approved motions, the other expenditures in the budget are plans that our various buildings and departments have laid out. And we may find out that something costs a little bit less than what we thought it would. But we also may find out on the other side that something costs a little bit more than we thought it would. And so I think it's important that buildings and departments have the budgetary authority to carry out the plans that they've crafted, which are going to support the education of our kids. And if at the end of the day, the result is in a positive difference, both on revenue and expense, I think that's a great thing. But I think it would be wrong to, the only way to make the budget work would be to restrict everybody's budget authority. And I don't believe that that's the way that we should approach this. The budget is a living document, it's our plan, and it's different than the actual financial results that come on June 30th.
Okay, and I guess looking at it, historically, in the years where we've had a balanced budget or proposed a balanced budget, we've ended up with surpluses. And I think we all understand that creating surpluses doesn't benefit the educational needs of our children, it doesn't benefit the community, so we don't want to add to our reserves. So I guess in looking at this and the way that we're explaining it and the justifications here, and they're very small percentages. I mean, our budget is tighter than probably 99% of other budgets in public and everywhere else, because I mean, the numbers are very accurate, they're very consistent, and it's $5 million is a super small percentage in our overall budget. So we're not talking, but so basically, I guess how I'm going to say this, and I don't know if it's the correct phrase. In order for us to present a balanced budget according to the historical variances, we are required to present a negative budget to the public.
I don't know that you are required to present a negative budget to the public, but I think there's a difference, and I think some of this is semantic. So the likely scenario is the projected scenario. The authorization you're giving administration is that deficit budget. So unlikely that we would need that, but you know, because I've had conversations with each of you, that Kevin and I don't feel like we're in a position that we could say, you voted for a balanced budget and we spend more than you authorized. And so the likely scenario is we're gonna underspend expenditures. That's what has happened historically. That's what Kevin shows in the projections that he shared at last meeting, as well as in that footer on the budget. But the budget document itself is authorization too. And I think that as board members, you can know that that is not a likely scenario based on history. And so legally, are we required to show that? No, but I do think that for us, we are much more comfortable with you voting that budget, things going as planned, and knowing that it will likely come in much better than we would be telling you that we've overspent.
Okay, and I guess then looking at this I have no confidence, I mean, I have full confidence, not that I don't get, I have full confidence that we're gonna have a balanced budget. And, you know, your numbers are gonna be much closer to the projected than we are with our preliminary. So if we're voting for, you know, if I decide to vote for this deficit, I'm voting for a balanced budget because I know historically that's where we're gonna come. But I just wanted, you know, it to be a matter of record and people understand if anybody's looking at this or anybody's questioning us on why we're approving a deficit budget. We're really not approving a deficit budget based on historical reference, and they could go back to the board meeting, the previous meeting, the first reading, and see where those actual numbers are, you know, in lieu of just the paragraph. But I'm glad that it's actually part of the document. I understand it's a living, breathing document, it's always changing, but, you know, I know in my heart that we're gonna have a balanced budget if we're $3 to $5 million in the red, so, based on the historical and our budgeting techniques. So just wanted that to be a matter of public record so people are aware that we are taking good care of the district's funds.
And I'll tag on to that for a second. Mr. Supple, how many years have we received a budgetary award?
13.
So, just want to reiterate that our budget practices are sound and that they are reviewed annually. And we have received one of the highest awards available in that area. So I also have confidence in the budget and the planning process. Board, any other questions or comments? Okay, by roll call.
Mrs. Lang?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Supple. Board, next on our agenda is Strategic Planning Committee updates. I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Hendricks-Harris.
Yeah, so we're gonna go a little different way than we have with our previous strategic plan updates, in that I wanted to talk with you tonight about the overall strategic plan and the progress that we're making on the big plan versus individual goal areas. So a couple things that I wanted you to know is, one, all 5 of those goal areas will have action steps submitted by July 1. So I know many of you have been waiting, what are we actually gonna do? And that has gone through committees, and we've asked each of the goal areas to submit those action plans by July 1. We did have some conversations in full cabinet to vet the initial major projects for next year, and I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. But you can imagine one of the things that we feel responsible for is just ensuring that the pace and the time and energy and resources are reasonable for what 5 different goal committees who are all passionate about their work have planned. And so we have spent a lot of time having conversations about those projects and making decisions moving forward. We're coordinating the work between goal areas. There is overlap, so if you talk about social emotional learning, part of that is teacher well-being. If you're talking about attracting and retaining, or goal 3 area work, goal 3 area work, you're also talking about wanting our employees to be satisfied and staff wellness as well. So just those kinds of things have come up. The LMS has crossed over several different goal areas, and we're having those conversations as a team to see where things overlap so that we're not duplicating our efforts. We have identified our KPIs, or our leading and lagging indicators. That is also will be finalized by July 1. And then we are looking, as we move to next year, especially in regards to standing committees, some people can no longer attend or might not be interested in the work, and we are doing membership in that regard. I just wanted to share with the board a couple of tools. These are very drafty still, but we've been playing around with them a little bit. 2 things that the goal champions do if they have a major initiative moving forward. One is to fill out an implementation plan, and that is a snippet of a very long implementation plan. But if we're going to vet an initiative, we want it to be well thought out and to have things thought about, not just about money, but about workload, about do we have leadership capacity within our district, do we have the funds, how much is hitting the front lines that are in charge of implementing these changes at one time. So they complete the implementation form. We spent some time talking about what we call our decision factors, our decision-making matrix. We have identified some things that we believe provide value in those initiatives. It is just a conversation point, so it certainly was not whoever got the highest points wins, but it allowed us to have some in-depth conversations about what we're moving forward and to weigh things like student impact, current leadership capacity, backed by evidence, and the amount of workload things we're going to take in regards to making our decisions. So having said that, for next year we have identified some big actions. We will be having some high school equity leaders. We have a train-the-train model for restorative practices that will begin. We will be piloting a phonics program. Goal 1 has been working on an early college option, so providing some guidance and support for our students so that they might graduate at least with what we call the core 42, as well as potentially receiving associate's degrees prior to graduation. So working on that. We are partnering with the Teachers College to advance balanced literacy, which is something we were doing, but in working with the Teachers College, we have had some offers of additional support, so we have increased our implementation plan there. We anticipate having a learning management system for next year, and then you probably have heard some things about the high school and math program that really does incorporate the vision of instruction that was discussed about in strategic planning. So less sit and get and more student-directed, working on the 4 C's in regards to math. So some of our next steps, we have taken some initial steps to align our school improvement plans with the strategic plan. We will continue to work on that moving forward, so we're kind of transitioning them over from the old plan to the new plan in regards to the building level focus in their plans. We did take some survey data from advisory committees, and as the board knows from your retreat, we re-evaluated with you all and made a determination that the advisories are not working and are not meeting needs. And so we will move to an overall, what we'll likely call the strategic plan steering committee, which will be similar to the core committee that made the plan, that will be updated on all 5 goal areas and will provide input 2 to 3 times a year. This was a change we just made today. We have been looking for programs to monitor internally, as well as to provide a public-facing page, the progress of not only our KPIs, but our strategies and our action steps. Mr. Dykeman was able to negotiate a very good rate on what I would call a Cadillac of programs, and, which was cheaper than the Yugo programs that we looked at earlier this week. And so we're very happy to have brought that purchase to you. And I think that's gonna help us do the last thing, which is to coordinate templates for reports and agendas, et cetera. We will continue our internal meetings of full cabinet and gold champions throughout next school year. That is really my strategic plan update with you all.
Excellent. Board, any questions regarding the strategic plan update? I'm excited about all the planning that was accomplished this year and looking forward to some of those big rocks getting underway. All right, next on our agenda is superintendent comments.
So just a few things tonight. Francis Howell is proud to announce that Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has recognized 3 Francis Howell elementary schools, Becky David, Daniel Boone, and Warren, as 2019 Missouri Gold Star Schools. All 3 schools have been nominated by the U.S. Department of Education for recognition as a 2019 National Blue Ribbon School. Only 5 other schools in Missouri were recognized this year as Gold Star schools. At the board retreat this week, board members discussed putting a no tax increase bond issue on a future ballot to address the district's facility needs. And while no vote has been taken, there was consensus about moving forward with an April bond issue. We will have a work session in August to begin to discuss specifics about projects. Now, the Missouri legislature has passed House Bill 161, which will prohibit any public school district in the state from starting school any earlier than 14 days before the first Monday of September. Governor Mike Parson has until mid-July to veto the bill, or it becomes state law. If the bill becomes law, it will go into effect for the previously approved board calendar for the 2021 school year. That approved calendar shows a start date of August 10th. If the bill becomes law, it would be needed to move to August 24th. Ms. Simpkins will have her work cut out for her. A committee and surveys will be used, and a new calendar needs to be developed. Because of potential changes, the 2021 calendar has been removed from our website. The National Merit Scholarship Corporation has announced that Ariana Chavez and Blake Peters from Francis Hall North and Sarah Ortball and Michael Spencer from Francis Hall High Schools are winners of the National Merit Scholarships financed by their respective colleges and universities. Recently, our summer camps and programs have officially started. In the middle school biomedical science camp, students started off their week learning about viruses, bacteria, and big outbreaks of different diseases. From there, they transformed into real scientists exploring how they can potentially cure genetic diseases by looking at DNA and genes. More than 250 Francis Howell Middle School students, Francis Howell School District Middle School students, are participating in this year's STEM camp at Sager Middle. The week-long camps provide students with hand-on activities that explore STEM projects and professions in a new and creative way. This month, we've also taken possession of our new building on Westwood. Dr. Vanderpool, Mr. Hahn, the facilities department are working to ensure that we will be ready to see students on day 1. Transportation is also on track for a successful day 1. As of today, we have 108 buses. Hiring, onboarding, facilities updates, fuel, routing, training, and inspections are all in progress. Our first major task will be to take over transportation for summer school beginning July 1. I want to thank Jennifer Simpson, her new team, finance, and human resources for all their hard work to make this happen.
Great, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is board comments and requests. Comments, requests this week? All right, let's take a look at our upcoming meetings. So we will have a July 18th meeting, but it will be a closed session meeting only.
I know we had some conversation about that. We will have a few items that will require a vote, but as we discussed a little bit at retreat, we can do everything by consent. There's nothing out of the ordinary. It's pretty much routine hires and purchases. We can do that via consent agenda item, and you all can make your public votes via email for our attorneys. So we'll do that for the July 18th meeting as well.
Very, very short. Then we'll work on our surprise. Our next upcoming meeting is then August 15th. Let's take a look at the current agenda. Any additions or corrections?
Renee, what will the timeline look like? This will be a new year, we talked about changing the scheduling of how we do closed.
Yes. I don't have it written down right.
I think we set our time for July 18th already, so the
Yes.
changes would come into play on August 15th, when we would have closed from 5:30 to 6:30 and begin with an open meeting at 6:30 and incorporate workshops into our open meeting, our business meeting, beginning at 6:30. Yes.
Correct, just making sure we know that.
No, excellent, thank you. And that'll take place on that August 15th meeting, that change. Very cool. All right, any other comments on that agenda?
Will we get the math data sooner this year?
We're supposed to at least get our first set in July.
Really?
We were supposed to get it earlier. Yes. We'll certainly update you and get that change.
Give or take 9 months.
Fair enough. Okay. Board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting. Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Stiglitz, by roll call.
Mr. Lang.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. All right. Motion carries 7-0.
I wish you good luck in trying to get these idiots to change it.